our YouTube so that others can join us from YouTube because of one or two limitations that we have on Zoom. Please bear with us. So now we have 51 persons. That's great. That's great. That's great. So as I speak with us now, we are live on YouTube. So quickly, without taking too much of our time, I would like to go straight to the introduction of our so please bear with us. Our speaker today. Sorry, this thing's kind of okay. Professor Isaac O. Albert is a professor of African history, peace and conflict studies, and the pioneer dean, Faculty of Multidisciplinary Studies, University of Ibadan. He trained at the University of Ibadan and the UN International Leadership Academy and Jordan of the University of Ibadan in peace and conflict study, and the MA and PhD of the University of Ilorin, Nigeria, in peace and strategic studies. He was the UNDP consultant for the design of the MA Peace and Development Study Program of the University Research Associate at the Center for Research on RISE at the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom from 2003 to 2007, and a resident scholar of the Rockefeller Foundation Bellagio Center in 2016. Founded the Society for Peace Studies and Practice, which today brings together, discuss the peace of the country. He is a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators, ICMC, a fellow of Institute of Corporate Administration, ICA, and an associate member of the Finnish Folklore Fellows, English, instituted by the Finnish Academy of Letters. He became a member West African body of Peacebuilding Fellows instituted by WANEP Regional Accra, Ghana in 2019. Professor Isaac O. Albert is a full member of the Chatham House, London. He was a federal delegate to the 2014 National Conference in Abuja. He served in the Committee on Immigration and Related Matters. In 2014-2015, he served as the member of the Presidential Panel of the Review's Nigerian Defense Policy. He was appointed the editor-in-chief of the African Union's African Journal on Terrorism in 2019. He was a very experienced mediator, and some of his intervention has been published as books, chapters in books, and journal articles in Nigeria and globally. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome our distinguished speaker for today, Professor Isaac O. Albert. Your Excellency, you are welcome, sir. Please, can you unmute your mic, sir?
Yes. Mr. Director, distinguished listeners to me, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by appreciating ICMC for inviting me to give this lecture. As the moderator said, I've been practicing mediation for over 20 years. I teach mediation in the classroom. I work with mediation groups across the globe. I advise ECOWAS, African Union, the UN. I am a consultant to the Commonwealth Office in London. And therefore, some of the things that I'll be sharing with you are more of my own personal experience than what I read in books. But I think we have to start from a very simple level and then build the argument to a higher level. The topic before us is insider mediation. And I am sure that when those of us who are, the mediators on the platform, when we were trained, we were told as practitioners that mediation is facilitated negotiation. In other words, you must first understand negotiation before you begin to call yourself a mediator. Because what a mediator is trying to do is to get the two sides of the conflict to have a discussion of the issues, moderated, and the discussion is moderated by a third-party neutral. Now, if you need a third-party neutral to serve as a mediator, then the concept insider mediation becomes a little bit contradictory and confusing, because you cannot be a third person in yourself. But what the concept of, can you hear me very well? Can you hear me?
We are hearing you. We are hearing you.
Loud and clear.
We can hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
We're hearing you, sir.
Thank you so much. Now, at academic level, we have several definitions of insider mediation, but I will call attention to the salient issues raised by those who have tried to define insider mediation. Humanitarian Dialogue, a Swiss NGO, defined insider mediators as individuals from within the conflicted society. That is to say, you're a member of the society that is having the problem. So, and what you are trying to do is to use your understanding of the conflict environment, the parties, the conflict situations, to help the parties to deal with their problems. So in other words, you are not actually importing, you are not bringing somebody from outside to deal with the problem, but you are dealing with the problem from inside. And I have a number of definitions that I've presented here. I want us to go to the next slide. Now, what I've tried to do is, from the different definitions, I try to isolate a number of properties that define insider mediation. The first is that the mediator has a deep knowledge of the conflict context. You have a deep knowledge of the conflict context. If there is a conflict in the in ASU today, if you have an intra-ASU problem today, and I'm serving as a mediator, I'm serving as a mediator because I have knowledge of the conflict context. An outsider might not understand the context of the conflict. If there is a conflict in Khan today, it might be difficult for us to bring somebody from outside. You need somebody who is part of that body, who understands the internal working mechanisms of that organization. So the first property of insider mediation is knowledge of the conflict context. Then two, geographical proximity to the parties. You are very close to the parties. You can easily reach them. If you pick your bicycle, you can reach them. If you walk on foot, you can reach them. If you take your car, in the next few minutes, you can reach them. And therefore, shuttle diplomacy is possible. You go from one party to the other because of the advantage of geographical proximity. The third one is you have a stake in the conflict. If that problem is not managed and that organization dissolves, you dissolve with the organization. If that organization is brought to disrepute, you bear part of the consequences. Then the first one is that you have respectable authority. The parties to that conflict consider you to be a person with very high personal credibility. And therefore, when you talk to anybody in the group, they are most likely to listen to you. And then the last point is trustability. That is to say, you're a person that can be trusted. You're a man of your words. You're not a person that will promise something and then do something else. Now, in taking a critical look at these properties, my mind went back to what we call legitimacy frame in mediation. I mean, I'm talking advanced mediation training now. I'm not talking ordinary level mediation training. You have 3 types of legitimacy frame. That is to say, the mediator, you are looking at the authority, the power of the mediator. You are looking at where the mediator is coming from. And when we are doing this, we have 3 types of mediators. You have those that we call independent mediators. Independent mediators get trained, and then in the next few months, they begin to advertise their professionalism. They ask people to come to them for managing their problems. Now, when you go to Europe, you go to America, you find this all over the place, you know, independent mediators. And in America, those that I work with in America charge per hour. You know, when you bring your problems to them, they charge you per hour. And some find it more lucrative than even legal practice in countries where mediators are respected. Then the second type is what we call social network mediators. Social network mediators are people who are network members of where the conflict is taking place. If there is a problem within ASU and I decide to intervene, I'll be intervening as a social network mediator because I'm part of that social network and my agenda is for that organization not to dissolve. And therefore, I will commit as much of my resources to it as necessary. Then the third one is what we call authoritative mediators. You find authoritative mediators in regional organizations. In ECOWAS, you have protocols for peace. And ECOWAS will tell you, these are the factors that define us. And these are the things we expect member states to do. These are the things that we don't want member states to do. So if there is a problem with any member states of ECOWAS, and ECOWAS appoints a mediator, that person is authoritative mediator. Authoritative mediator in the sense that, yes, it will allow the parties to determine how the conflict will be managed, but it will not allow them to come up with an agreement that violates the principles of that organization. For example, there is this protocol of unconstitutional change of government, you know, to say if you come into power in any ECOWAS member state through an unconstitutional means, that ECOWAS will not recognize you. So if ECOWAS sends a mediator to the parties in that type of conflict, you are most likely to have the resolution actually fitting neatly into the existing protocols on how that type of problem should be managed. Now, the point I'm trying to make by calling attention to these 3 frameworks is to say that an insider mediator is more of social network mediator. It belongs to the social network. But it is also possible to argue that it will be an authoritative mediator using the ECOWAS protocol that just now I want to answer the next set of questions. Why do we need insider mediation? When do we need insider mediation? Where do we need insider mediation? And I think I've spoken to this indirectly. One, when you need a trusted and respected key stakeholders to manage your problem, the best thing to do is to turn to an insider mediation. You know, then if your issues are too sensitive for outsiders to know about, you might choose insider mediation. And then your cultural and normative closeness to the conflict parties might make the parties to choose you to mediate in the conflict. Yes, you are a member of the Tenant Landlord Association, but the members know that your yes is yes, and that you are always upright when you are dealing with any issue. They might ask you to serve as a mediator. Now, where is it that insider mediation will work? In what areas would insider mediation work? It works perfectly in political disputes. We've been hearing of crises in APC, crisis in LP, crisis in PDP. Now, you will not see these people bringing an outsider into the management of their problems, because the reasons why they are fighting, in most cases, should not be for external consumption. They have their own internal conflict, their own internal secrets that must be protected. And therefore, insider mediation works well with political conflicts. It works well with identity conflicts, most especially when you are dealing with issues of religion. I don't expect Khan to bring a Muslim to serve as their mediator, or to bring a member of Nigerian Bar Association to come and help them manage their problems. No, they will manage the problem from within. Muslims too will manage their problems from within. Then when you have intra-group conflict, that is a conflict within a group that is considered to be one. If Yoruba people have a problem today, I don't expect them to go and be a Fulani person to come and help them manage it. If an Igbo group is having a problem, they are forced to generate insider mediation, a mediator. So we have different groups that will fit into this, diverse communities, you know, dealing with organizational conflicts, and then you are dealing with an organization that has existing protocols for management of problems. All these people will need insider mediation. Next slide. Now, how do you do insider mediation? Let me start by saying that insider mediation is very, very complex. It is not meant for first-timer, and it's not meant for people just starting to understand mediation. It is a very sophisticated kind of engagement. Now, we expect you first and foremost to have sound training in mediation. And your sound training in mediation must be constructed around the fact that you know that mediation is facilitated negotiation. I see many mediators that don't understand negotiation. You cannot be a mediator when your knowledge of negotiation is slim. You must understand how parties put pressure in negotiation. You must understand techniques for handling pressures. You must understand procedures, tactics, strategies in negotiation. It is then you who call yourself a mediator will be able to manage the process. Otherwise, few minutes into the commencement of your so-called mediation, the system will collapse. So we expect you first and foremost to be well trained as a mediator. Then we expect you to have years of experience in the practice of mediation. And we are saying here that insider mediation is not for beginners. Most especially when you are brought into a very complex problem, you know, whether at national level, whether at international level, a very complex problem, something that can blow on your face. You are expected to have experience. You must have tried your hands on smaller problems. The third one is that for you to be an insider mediator, you must be perfect in your understanding of what we call knowledge, skill, passion nexus. Knowledge, skills, and passion nexus. Knowledge is saying that, yes, you have attended trainings on mediation. But the question is, what is the percentage of your training has to do with skills? You can acquire knowledge from anywhere, but knowledge is different from skills. Unfortunately, mediation is 75% skills-based. It is not just a person, it's not just a matter of my defining mediation for you, telling you how it is done, but the most important is the skills that you need. So there is a need for you to have more knowledge of the skills. And then the third one is that for you to be a successful mediator, you must be passionate about problem solving. Now, as you go around the world, you see people who know mediation, but when you interact with them, you realize they don't have the skills. Some have the skills, but they don't have the passion. What they just want to do is to make money from mediation. Now, for you to be able to do insider mediation, you must be able to bring knowledge, skills, and passion together, because you will see a lot of challenges as you are managing the problem. And what keeps you on the project is that you are totally committed to helping the parties. And then you must have high resilience capacity, because in the process, there could be some insult, there could be some things that you don't like that will happen. But if you are resilient, you would not find it difficult to size up with the problem. Now, the basic principles here, you maintain your principle of neutrality and impartiality. Now, let me call attention especially to these principles, neutrality and impartiality. Now, the question is, how do you maintain your neutrality in a conflict that you are part of? You have been cheated in this organization. You are a victim, but now you are inside that mediation. How do you protect neutrality? How do you observe impartiality? And that is why I'm saying insider mediation is very difficult, because several things will happen that might begin to touch on your ego, that might begin to challenge your knowledge system, that might begin to abuse your personality. But you remain a mediator who must be neutral, who must be impartial. Now, the second one is that you must be an effective communicator. And to be an effective communicator, you must observe your principle of active listening. You must be skilled in your choice of words, and you must carefully use your words, because an adjective could create problems for you. Because of an adjective that you have used, you could be accused of impartiality. You could be accused of siding one of the parties. Therefore, an insider mediator must be very, very careful. And in being careful, you are managing verbal and non-verbal cues. You are not just dealing with only verbal cues. Your glasses, how you remove your glasses, how you shake your head, how you nod, all of this must be professionally controlled so that nobody will accuse you of partiality. Then you must have a high level of emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, ability to bear shock, ability to handle complex situations in a very simple manner. Then you must be skilled in problem-solving techniques. When things get very tough, you have the knowledge of ice-breaking strategies. You know how to do brainstorming. You know how to do rainstorming. You know how to do caucusing. And where you are running out of your professional years, you know how to fall back on your native intelligence to be able to put the situation under control. Now, the next slide has to do with what I call a typology of insider mediators. Now, you can have individuals serving as insider mediators. Institutions can also play that role. Now, an individual with access or gravitas, you are respected, and then you are chosen, or you chose yourself to be an insider mediator. Your group could also mandate you to serve as an insider mediator. You individuals or groups serving as professional mediators, well, we can fall back on somebody who is already trained as a professional independent mediator. We can fall back on him to say, look, in this society, in this group, you are the only person who has been trained in mediation. Please serve as the insider mediator. So, that level we're dealing with individuals. But we also have institutions. We can invite civic organizations that we know will help us. But these civic organizations are within our locality. We can invite institutions of government that are close to us. We can also have specialized institutions that will serve as our insider. And then I asked the last question that I asked. And the question is, and so what? Now we brought in an insider mediator. Why now are we discussing it today? And why are we encouraging it? We are encouraging it, one, because many complex problems around the world have been dealt with through insider mediation. The group is very difficult to reach. The group is very difficult to manage. But as a result of insider mediation, the society has been able to get something positive from that group. Now, we have different case studies globally that could be used. And then we are Nigerians. Since the 1999 transition to civil rule, we've witnessed how different political parties run into problems and come out of the problems using insider mediation. Now, when we say they use insider mediation, many of these groups use insider mediation unprofessionally. But this forces us to begin to reflect on what it would look like if they had used insider mediation professionally. So, across the globe, we are witnessing many more cases of groups, individuals using insider mediation in a manner that is actually contributing to global peace and security. And I think this is why the UN is promoting it, UNDP is promoting it. So, but even when we look at, commercial disputes nowadays, Some of us think that the mediator must always come from outside. But when you build the capacity of these institutions, these business organizations at peacetime, if you train them at peacetime, when they have problems, they are most likely to throw up their own insider mediators than actually calling you from outside to come and help you. And therefore, my experience outside Nigeria is corporate bodies are always conducting training for their staff members on insider mediation. Well, they may not call it insider mediation, but they keep building their capacity to be able to manage problems. And then when there is a problem, they generate their own insider mediator from within. And it takes them shorter time to deal with the problem, and the results are more effective, implementations are more clement, and things work easier for them. Now, insider mediation could also be ad hoc in some cases. And here I'm actually calling attention to my own professional experience. When things get too tough for managing the problem, you engineer an insider mediation. But what we have realized with political leaders across Africa is that when they use insider mediation unprofessionally and it fails, they become confrontational. Most of the mediation efforts of some of these international organizations have actually demonstrated this. I don't want to demonize any of the international agencies that ran into this problem. Now, the point we're trying to make is that if there is a problem in ECOWAS or a problem in the African Union, and you appoint a former head of state as a mediator, the professional question we ask is, who trained him to be a mediator? Do you become a mediator because you were a former head of state? Now, when you are sent on mediation missions, which we have observed, and you begin to fuck up, because you see clearly that these are not mediators, you begin to see problems. And therefore, when the mission fails, these leaders become confrontational and then begin to recommend the use of force. Now, the point I'm trying to make out of this is that we will probably create a better world if we can inject trainings on mediation more into the activities of some of these leaders. Now, when they are given the assignments of mediation, and you suggest a 1-day or 2-day training, they tell you, who are you to train us? We have been in government for 20 years. Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that many of our leaders that are appointed as mediators, one, cannot define mediation. They do not understand principles of mediation. They do not understand the strategies. And in some cases where trained mediators are asked to assist them, they don't listen to advice. But the lesson that I've taken as a scholar is that we can, we have a better world if our leaders are willing to be trained as mediators. Now, the last PowerPoint that I have, I think that should be the last, is that in 2013, a few of us met in Johannesburg. There are several meetings going on where it was said that there will be peace, there will be more peace in Africa if our leaders could be trained in mediation, insider mediation. And so there was an African Insider Mediators Platform Consultative Conference that took place in Johannesburg. It was jointly sponsored by Action for Counter Conflict Transformation and the UNDP. Now, at the end of that meeting, there was agreement on 4 pillars that we thought should be promoted for actually escalating the value, the usage, and the incorporation of insider mediation in governance in Africa. The first pillar is that we need to build community of practice. For example, ICMC has established itself as a very credible organization. Now, the question is, how do we escalate what ICMC is doing? Which other organization will want to work with ICMC to promote insider mediation? I was a board member of the West African Network for Peace Building in Ghana for 2 years. And I was a board member of that organization for about 8 years before I became its board chairman. Now, the difference between ICMC and ONEP is that whereas ICMC focus more on training, ONEP actually engages in practice of mediation, whether as mediators or as an organization that has dismantled different strategies of mediation and now use these different parts in dealing with different problems. Because there are situations where you are not invited as a mediator, but you are also expected to contribute to problem solving. So you might today take to a meeting active listening skills, strategic engagement, strategic communication. You take different things to different meetings. And this contributes to the peace that you are looking for. So we need to build community of practice. ICMC has succeeded in actually establishing itself across the country. But I still think we are operating at track 2, civil society organizations. There's a need for us to bring the other tracks, the other 8 tracks into it. Track 1, the government, business organizations, academic institutions, and so on, to be able to strengthen what we refer to in 2013 as a community of practice. Then we said we need to strengthen training and capacity building. Now, when ICMC train, we charge fees. It is still to show that we are making our own efforts. In some other countries, organizations like ICMC are specially funded to saturate the society with its training programs. This is part of your national peace architecture, because the more people you train in mediation, the softer the society will become, the better the society will become. So if ICMC is still charging fees, and if the fees are so high that some of us are unable to pay, it is to say that the government is not interested in mediation. And a government that is not interested in mediation is not actually in charge of a society that will survive. And I think that is why Nigeria is in crisis today. Everywhere is in crisis. And this is because those who work for the peace are not attended to. How many meetings has any government invited ICMC? So there is a disconnect between the state and the society. This is part of the problem. The third one is actually talking about direct support. Mediation process. So we need, and then we need partnership. Partnership with government, partnership with relevant organizations that can help to support these processes in the country. And therefore, when our leaders are talking about rejigging security architecture of Nigeria, I don't actually think in some cases that they understand what it is called rejigging. Because what everybody is talking about is the kinetic problem solving. Arrest them, kill them, lock them up. That is not going to bring peace to your society. We need a soft approach. And the soft approach starts with mediation. Let us build the capacity of our people in mediation. And that takes me to the concluding PowerPoint, where I have my personal experience sharing, and this personal experience sharing, I want to keep to myself. Some of the issues, they are not things that could be discussed online because they have to do with sensitive problems. But some of these projects I have published. For example, I've published our work with OPC, how we supported that group to calm down. The United Nations University actually asked for the document. The aspect that would be published was published. But what we did was to help them to start with insider mediation. If a Modakeke conflict started in 1834, it stopped in 2002. The strategy was insider mediation. What we did was not to just intervene straight in the conflict. We took the two sides apart. We trained the two sides in insider mediation, made them to practice, and then they suggested to us that they would not want to meet the other party. And when they meet the other party, we built the two sides into a panel of insider mediators. So they were the ones that created the solutions that ended our conflict. The two sides, constituted into a panel of mediators. And we also have a number of ECOWAS projects, which I do not have the authority to share with you here. So let me stop at this level. Thank you for the kind attention that you have given to me. It is 45 minutes now, and I was instructed to stop at 12:45. Thank you so much for the platform that has been given to me. I hope that I've made a few points that will help you to understand that insider mediation is very important, but it's an advanced level of training that has to be done. It is not for beginners. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir, Your Excellency, for that great presentation. I must commend you that you've done a great job, and we are glad to share from your experience. So the next on our agenda is we would like to take comments and questions. We have a couple of questions on our chat box. So if you don't mind, can I read it? Can I read them, sir?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, sir. This is coming from Dear Koroma, forgive my pronunciation. He's asking, what is the difference between workplace mediation and insider mediation?
Okay. Workplace mediation simply has to do with the problems you have in your establishments where you work. Now, it is. I would say that it is a complex question, because complex in the sense that insider mediation is saying you get the mediator from inside, but there is no workplace that does not have its own internal rules for management of conflict. Therefore, technically speaking, we differentiate between workplace. We differentiate between conflict management and conflict settlement. I don't want to take you too deep into technical issues. Conflict settlement has to do with when the problem is managed based on agreed protocols. For example, if you're working with the University of Ibadan, the protocol is saying that if I give you query, you're expected to respond to that query period. If your answers are not satisfactory, I escalate the problem by taking you to the disciplinary committee probably of the department or faculty, and the matter goes up, and it will end at the council of the university, and you are dismissed. That is when you are using the conflict settlement track, because the laws are, the regulations are there. But so when we say workplace conflict, we are referring to many things. But when we say insider mediation, if we have chosen mediation to deal with the problem, we are saying actually that we will process the problem privately using mediation. We are not going to escalate it to the level that you will be caught by the regulations of the organization. So that is what I'm saying. Is I don't want to take you too high into. So let us just take workplace, mediation as the kind of mediation that we do. We give people soft landing. The person is being provided soft landing opportunity. But if you are working in an organization, that organization has rules, and if those rules are applied on you, then you might end up with a totally different track. It might not be mediation. Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Another question from Dr. Benga Barada is that Prof, thanks for mentioning these status-based mediator of ex-government leaders. Please, why are these people undermining the formal training in mediation?
Hello? Hello?
Did you get that, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, from Dr. Benga Barada, he said, Prof, thanks for mentioning the status-based mediator of ex-government leaders. Please, why are these people undermining the formal training in mediation?
Well, you see, you are dealing with a power-based framework. We have different levels of power. You see, the power-based framework is saying that we can make a man a woman, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now, when you look at the African Union's panel of the wise, and you're looking at ECOWAS Council of Elders, who, professionally speaking, are supposed to be mediators, because their roles under the peace architecture, whether AFSA of African Union, or you are dealing with the protocol, governance, or whatever for ECOWAS, these people are supposed to be mediators. But their functions are listed. And when you look at the functions, they are supposed to be mediators. But now, in appointing them, the document will say this will be chosen, these people, this committee will be constituted from former heads of state, former minister, former minister of external affairs, and so on. We had an embarrassing situation in an African country. This is an open platform. I don't want to mention that country. The head of state lost an election and he didn't want to leave. And then they constituted a panel of mediators to meet him. And when they came to his office, he looked at them. He pointed at one of them and said, "And you?" Now, this person he was referring to as I and you is a person who has been in government for ages, who refused to leave. Now, he's a mediator. Now, that is telling you that the so-called mediator lacks what we call personal credibility. A mediator must have personal credibility. When I come to intervene in your affairs, you should see me as a credible person. Now, the document will not tell you that this person ought to have been trained in mediation. So they constitute their panel of mediators, and in most cases, you don't find anybody there that is a mediator. But what some of the organizations do is officers that have small training mediation to follow them. Yes, some of these people that follow them they have the knowledge of mediation, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the skills. You cannot say this is the skill set. Have they ever participated in mediation? How many hours? So they are in the meeting because they are program officers, they are senior this, they are senior that. So what I'm trying to say is that you have the huge gap out there that can be filled. And that when you fill this huge gap, you begin to see an African society that is working better. In the American military, I'm not even talking about the society generally. You have mediators who are professionals. I met several of them who are professional mediators. One of them I saw, a major, not even a general. So when these people follow you on a mission, they are there to perform a professional role. But I don't think we have reached that stage of professionalizing knowledge in mediation. There are people today in government, when you tell them you want to train them in mediation, they ask you, who is going to be the trainer? I mean, we were in the 1990s, we were dealing with a very complex problem in this country. When I appeared before the district, one of them told me, how old are you? So it was matching my age and professionalism in mediation. So we have several gaps that we still have to fill. But the future, the future is bright. If the likes of ICMC is not tired, if they are not tired, if they keep doing what they are doing, I see us getting it right one day. Over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. In fact, there are so many comments and questions in our chat box. We might not be able to take all of them. Some comments here is, thank you very much, sir. This is very informative and insightful section from Radib Budiraja. I think that's from India. And we would like to take the last question before we go. Sir, what are the guidelines for insider mediator? I think we can end with that.
Well, let me say that the guidelines for insider mediation come from the guidelines for general mediation. But what we need to understand is that there's a need for you to have practiced ordinary mediation severally with several organizations before you begin to try your hands on insider mediation. Because insider mediation requires a lot of tact. It requires a lot of patience. I mean, just as we say in the classroom, it is more difficult to be a mediator than to be a judge. A judge is guided by his rules. You know, there are codes of conduct. You don't go to a court of law and begin to misbehave. So the work is easy. It's easy for a judge. And therefore we say, that the power of the judge lies in the statute books, the laws of the country, the powers of that court of law. But for a mediator, your power is in the trust that you get from the parties. The moment the parties no longer trust you, you have lost control. And the golden rule is that the moment you are no longer trusted by the parties, you should withdraw from a mediation process. A mediator cannot force himself or herself on the parties. It is professionally unacceptable. Now, if you therefore want to be trusted, if you don't want to lose track of the process, that means those principles of mediation that you use when you were dealing with small problems, now you have to scale to higher level. You are called names and you develop your own strategies of handling it. There is a shouting match from the two sides to develop your own strategies of calming down the situation without begging. Because the moment you begin to beg, it is assumed that you have lost a part of your credibility. And one party will tell you later that I'm continuing in this process because you begged me. So it's a very, the skill is you need higher skills for being an insider mediator. That is the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you very much, sir. So I would like to take comments, but before we take the last comment from the president of the institute, I would like to bring up Mr. Samuel and Saiso. Please, can you unmute your mic? Mr. Samuel. Okay, thank you. Please, can you turn on your visuals?
Good afternoon. I'm actually in a
Mr. Samuel, over to you before we take the last comment from the president of the institute.
Yeah, it's me. I'm speaking with you. You called me Mr. I am not Mr. I'm female. So please correct that. Can you hear me? ICMC. My apologies if I use the video.
We can hear you, ma. We'll appreciate if you can turn on your visuals, ma.
I was trying to explain something here. Hold on, just hold on. I'm trying to respond.
Great.
If I put on my video, you're going to hear a bit of waves in the background. The bandwidth is quite low, so you'd have to excuse me at this instant.
Just go ahead. Go ahead, madam.
Thank you very much. So, sir, I have listened to every conversation so far, and I agree with you 100%. However, I want to share my concern with you on a twist in your conversation. The first one is we do agree that mediation exercise is usually recommended at all times, except you have to resort to going to court. Now, in the process of conducting insider mediation, you now discover halfway through that the mediation exercise you're carrying out, ultimately the actions that led to the mediation somehow negates organizational values, right? And it now comes to a point where you're required to take action, stringent actions or consequences on what you're mediating on. Do you now take a back seat? At what point do you take a back seat, rather, to say, you know what, we can't continue with this mediation exercise because it's going against all our principles and our values, considering that we're a professional organization? At what point do you take a back seat? And if you do consider taking a back seat, would it mean that you are now twisting your mouth or turning your views on what you had originally decided on to take another to take another perspective? Because right now I'm getting a bit confused. I found myself in such situation. Thank you, sir. Please go ahead and respond, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. What you are saying is technical, and some of us became professors writing on some of these things because there are things that you take for granted. Personally, I don't think authoritative mediators and social mediators are truly mediators, because when you are doing authoritative mediation and social network mediation, you violate a number of principles of mediation. For example, a mediator is not supposed to know the answer, the solution to the problem before you start it. But in authoritative mediation and social network mediation, you know what the outcome should be, and yet you pretend to be a mediator. Now, back to your question, man. If I am in a department and two colleagues are always fighting and they are creating problems for the department, I may choose to be an insider mediator, work with them. But if they continue to give us problems, I may have to report them to the head of department to query them. Now, when I report them to the head of department to be queried, I have violated a principle of mediation. And that is why I'm saying that insider mediation is very complex. You know, just as we are presenting it to us as something that is simple, we also have to recognize the fact that it is also complex. So I started as a mediator trying to bring them together to say, let's find a solution to this problem, tell us, walk through your problems. But when they keep giving problems to the department, to the extent that I no longer enjoy the department, we might have to escalate the conflict, you know, the management of the conflict. And when we escalate it, then we move into the realm of what is called conflict settlement. Conflict settlement has to do with putting the two of them on the scale of the university judicial system. If you allow me to use judicial system. You know, if one of them said, he slapped me, then we'll look into the books. The person that slapped a colleague last week, what happened to the person? And this could lead to dismissal. So, but we should welcome this generally as students of conflict management, because generally we are provided for frameworks for managing conflicts. You have what is called peacemaking. And of course, our mediation can come under peacemaking. It can come under peace building. It can come under preventive diplomacy. But when you come to the realm of peacekeeping, you are using force to deal with the problem. So the question she's trying to ask is that, how do we get frustrated to the extent that our mediation will lead to some other things? And yes, in the Arab-Israeli conflict, Americans have been mediating since the 50s, but the conflict is still there. And as a result of mishandling of mediation processes, which we can technically explain, lives were lost because we expect mediation to work. But when it fails, what do? When it fails, the parties will do ABC. The current problems we have with us now is Sudan. Saudi Arabia is intervening, and I think I can't remember the second party that is serving as mediators. But at a stage, the parties said, look, enough of mediation. They started fighting, but they are back to mediation. So we are not saying mediation will solve all problems. And we are saying that mediation is very, very good if the parties will allow it, because it is their own process. If they will cooperate with the third party neutral, it will work. But it is possible to get that third party neutral within the conflict environment, and that is what turns the process into insider mediation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to have the president of the Institute with us here today on this webinar. Please join me as I welcome Dr. Agada Elachi for his comment or for his closing remarks. Your Excellency.
Well, thank you, Joshua.
Thank you.
Mine is not a comment as such, it's just to say a big thank you to Prof. Prof, as always, we are always we're grateful to you for the depth of knowledge that you continue to share with us. Prof, for those who do not know, is when I did my master's in peace and conflict studies, was one of my teachers, and I was able to draw from his wealth of knowledge. Prof has been able to demonstrate for us this afternoon the role that insider mediators can play, and each one of us is an insider mediator depending on the context in which we find ourselves. And I'm particularly excited about the question, drawing the analogy between workplace conflict and, of course, the role that an insider can play. The key thing to keep at the back of your mind as we close this webinar is that the insider mediator must be neutral and impartial. Prof underscored that. So you cannot come to the process without neutrality and impartiality. And this is even harder for the insider mediator because you are within the context of the dispute and all that. So another very important thing you must bring to the process is that you must be a respected person in the community. When you bring that to the table, those two factors will then build trust in the parties, and that will lead to the parties opening up. And that openness, of course, will then promote the dialogue that will hopefully result in the resolution of the dispute between the parties. Prof, on behalf of the Governing Council of the Institute and the entire members, we thank you. We know you're a very busy man to have created this time, not only to present this webinar, but even to research it. We are very grateful. And I want to take a personal undertaking from you, sir, that I will hopefully receive a copy of that paper with the possibility of putting it into print one of these days. I thank you very much, and God bless you. And I say good afternoon to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. This information is for us, as we know. During the last webinar, some of our participants requested for the certificate of participation, and the Institute generously has made that available with just a token. So if you are interested as a participant of this webinar, you want to get the certificate of participation, you can send the request to support@icmc.ng, and you have to pay a token of just 5,000 naira, to the Institute account. So once you make your request to support@icmc.ng, the account details and the certificate will be made available for you. Prof, thank you so much for joining us. It was really great to have you here with us. I can see the registrar, a person of Madam Aisha Abdullahi. Thank you so much for joining, and other members of the ICMC executive. Thank you so much for joining. I think the president is saying something.
Yes, Joshua. Before we leave, let me emphasize that one. Please post the email address in the chat group for people who want to the support at ICMC. Post it in the chat group so that people can copy it. But please note that the certificate is optional. It is optional. So only if you exercise.
But in a nutshell, the Institute would like to appreciate everyone for taking their time to be part of this webinar today. Thank you very much. My name is Joshua Adikbetu. And if you would like to watch this webinar again, I am pleased to inform you that it is available on our YouTube page. If you want to watch again, you can go to YouTube and search for Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators, or you search for ICMC Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining once again. Have a good afternoon.
Joshua, I'm going to quarrel with you if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Hello, Joshua.